Sometimes people don't value your presence until your absence becomes too loud to ignore. They didn't care. They didn't choose you. They didn't even blink when you tried. And now, suddenly, they remember. Out of nowhere, they act curious, like they've just woken up from a dream they forgot they were in. Isn't that funny, my friends? How you can pour your energy into someone, get nothing back, and then the moment you stop giving, they come knocking. This isn't magic. It's human nature. And today, we're going to talk about the truth most people don't want to face. The truth that stings at first, but frees you forever. Hey folks, imagine this. You're the sun. Bright, constant, warm. You rise every day without fail, lighting up their world. And what do? They wear sunglasses, close the blinds, complain it's too hot. But the moment you disappear, the moment clouds cover your light, suddenly they're looking for you, wondering where you went, missing what they took for granted. You see, when something is always there, people stop feeling it, but remove it, it becomes unforgettable. That's what's happening when they suddenly start valuing you after showing no interest at first. It's not that you weren't valuable, it's that your value was invisible to eyes that were never ready to see it. We've been told lies, my friends, that if you're nice enough, consistent enough, patient enough, they'll appreciate you. But in the real world, emotional availability without boundaries gets you ignored. People don't respect what's handed to them on a silver plate without effort. They respect what they have to earn. That's the hard truth. They didn't change. You did. You stopped dancing for their approval. You stopped handing over your piece like a free sample. And that silence you gave them, that's what echoed. That's what woke them up. I know some of you are asking, why didn't they see my worth when I was trying? Because, folks, when you chase someone, you're showing them they're the prize. And when you stop, when you start choosing you, they start questioning everything. That's how power shifts. That's how perception changes. It's not in the noise, it's in the quiet strength of a man or woman who no longer needs to be chosen to feel complete. That's what people feel when you evolve. They feel the absence of your energy, and it hits them harder than any speech ever could. Let me tell you something funny. You can send them good morning texts, give them attention, support them when they're down, and they'll treat you like your background music. But let 1 week go by without checking in. Suddenly, they're wondering where you are, who you're talking to, why you're not trying anymore. It's wild, but it's real. That's not love. That's validation hunger. They didn't want you. They wanted your attention. But when you remove that attention, now they start confusing regret with attraction. And you, my friend, become unforgettable, not because you tried harder, but because you stopped trying at all. So if you're feeling confused, wondering why they're circling back, understand this. It's not about them waking up. It's about you leveling up. Your silence, your distance, your growth. That's what they feel. They're not missing the old you. They're realizing the new you isn't available to them anymore. And that is the shift. That's when tables turn. When the one who once ignored you starts chasing the version of you they never thought you'd become. So here's your reminder today. You are not here to beg, prove, or wait. You are here to grow, glow, and go. Let that be your energy. Write it in the comments. I choose me. That's your power. That's your peace. And that's your reminder that your value doesn't shrink just because someone couldn't see it. Like and subscribe if you feel that shift within you. And stay with me, because what's coming next will show you exactly why your silence is louder than their approval ever was. Number 1. They didn't value you because you were too easy to access. When you give them everything too soon, they learn to expect it, not respect it. It's a painful truth, folks. Being available doesn't guarantee you'll be appreciated. In fact, the more accessible you are, the more invisible you become. People crave mystery, not certainty. And if you were always there, texting back instantly, showing up without hesitation, giving without being asked, they didn't see that as love. They saw it as something they could count on, without having to earn it. You were on demand, like a streaming service, and they scrolled right past you, thinking they could always come back to it later. Now imagine this. You walk into a luxury store, the most expensive thing in there. It's behind glass. It has security. It doesn't go on sale. It's not begging you to buy it. But the moment something is in the bargain bin, everyone walks past it. Why? Because people are wired to value what they believe is rare, what they believe is earned, not handed to them. And you, my friend, made yourself too easy to reach, not because you're weak, but because you were honest, open, and had genuine intentions. You weren't playing games, but sadly, the world reads that as ordinary. Now you're probably wondering, why does it have to be like this? Why can't people appreciate consistency, kindness, and emotional presence? Why do they run from the very thing they say they want? Here's why. They don't fear losing you when you're always available. There's no urgency, no stakes, no depth. When they know you'll always answer, always be there, always forgive, there's no reason for them to pause, reflect, or value your time. You've made yourself the constant, when what sparks attraction is contrast. It hurts, doesn't it? Knowing that your good heart was ignored, that your consistency was mistaken for desperation, that your love was returned with indifference. But this is where you must break free from the lie you've been sold, that being good to people guarantees they'll treat you right. Because the harsh truth is, in this world, emotional generosity is only respected when it's paired with boundaries. Kindness without limits, that's how you get taken for granted. And this is where many of you fall into the emotional trap. You think, if I just show them more love, if I just prove I'm not like the rest, if I stay available long enough, they'll realize I'm the one. But they don't. Not because you're not enough, but because you've shown too much too soon. You gave them the final chapter before they even earned the first page. You made it too easy. And what comes easy is never valued. Let me tell you something raw. There's nothing more unattractive to someone than the feeling that they already have you, without effort. It's not fair, it's not moral, but it's real. And in the back of your mind, you felt it, didn't you? That fear that you were giving too much, that anxiety every time you sent another text without a reply, that gut feeling when they started pulling back. You knew, but you kept going, hoping that your effort would flip the script, that they'd finally see you, that they'd feel what you feel. But people rarely feel urgency when they're not afraid to lose you, and you, being always there, removed that fear. You became comfort, and comfort without challenge becomes background noise. That's what you were to them, not because you lacked value, but because you never made them earn access to your energy. You handed out gold like it was pennies. And yet, this isn't where your story ends. This is where your story begins, because now you understand. You've seen what happens when you give too much without being received, and it's time to stop bleeding emotionally for people who only show up when you're gone. This is the moment you realize you don't have to make anyone value you. You just have to stop being available to those who don't. From this moment on, you're not going to explain your worth. You're going to embody it. You're not going to chase people who wouldn't walk one step for you. You're going to reclaim your energy, set your standards, and start treating your time like the rare currency it is. Because you, my friend, are not on clearance. You are not a bargain. You are not desperate. You are a limited edition, and it's time to act like it. Don't confuse this with coldness. You're not becoming bitter. You're becoming better. You're not withholding love. You're protecting it. From now on, only those who respect your presence will have access to it. Only those who show up with consistency, clarity, and care will get the privilege of your energy. The rest? Let them wonder. Let them feel what they made you feel: uncertainty, distance, the ache of not knowing. Because when you finally stop being available to those who never saw you, something incredible happens. They start seeing you everywhere. They feel the shift. And suddenly, the same people who overlooked you will act brand new. Why? Because your silence, your withdrawal, your growth, it speaks louder than words. It says, "I am not yours to take for granted anymore." So write this in the comments right now. I am not always available. Say it with your chest. Let the world hear it. Let them feel your energy changing. This is your reminder that your love isn't a free sample. It's a masterpiece, and only those who see the value in the frame get to hang it on their wall. Stay with me, folks, because what's coming next will show you how they felt your energy shift, and how that alone began to haunt them. Number 2, they felt your energy pull back, and that shocked their ego. The loudest silence is when your energy no longer reaches where it once lived. You didn't yell. You didn't argue. You didn't send a long text explaining yourself. You just pulled back, quietly, calmly, no drama. And yet that silence, that absence, it echoed louder than anything you could have said. My friends, when people have grown used to your emotional presence, when they've fed off your attention like it's oxygen, the moment you stop breathing into them, they feel it, deep, not in their heart, but in their ego. Because your pullback wasn't just about distance, it was about power. Here's what most people won't admit. Your energy was a lifeline to them. Maybe they didn't love you. Maybe they didn't want to commit. Maybe they even acted like they didn't care, but they felt your attention. They soaked in your emotional consistency. They felt safe knowing you were orbiting them. And the second that orbit collapsed, something cracked. Not their heart. Not yet. First, their control. Picture this, folks. You're like a fireplace in the middle of winter. Even if they don't sit close, even if they act like they don't need the heat, they like knowing it's there. The moment the flame dies, suddenly the room feels cold. That's what happened when you stopped trying, when you stopped checking in, when your energy went quiet. They didn't panic out of love. They panicked out of loss of control. And that's what most people confuse for missing you. It's not always regret. It's ego disruption. Now you might ask, why do they only notice when I pull back? Why didn't they see my worth when I was present? It's because presence without boundaries becomes invisible. It's expected. It's assumed. But absence is sharp. It cuts. And when you withdraw your energy, you're no longer giving them emotional comfort for free. You're no longer the emotional support character in their story. You become your own main character. And that shift? Oh, they feel it. Let's break one more lie we've been told. If you love someone, never pull away. That's nonsense. If love is being taken for granted, if your peace is being drained, if your presence is treated like background noise, it is not love to stay. It is weakness to remain where your energy is wasted. Pulling back doesn't mean punishing. It means protecting. It means refusing to entertain someone's inconsistency with your consistency. That's self-respect. But let's be real. It's hard, especially if you're a giver, especially if you've been conditioned to believe that more effort equals more results. It takes strength to pull back. It takes courage to go quiet. You'll fight with yourself. You'll feel guilty. You'll doubt whether they ever noticed your absence at all. But make no mistake, they noticed. Maybe not with words, maybe not with action, but emotionally, subconsciously. Their egos screamed. You see, people rarely value a connection when it's always pouring into them. But the moment it stops, the moment the tap runs dry, they feel dehydrated, and suddenly the water they once let spill down the drain becomes sacred. That's how ego works. It doesn't want you. It wants to know it still could have you. And when you take that could away, their mind races. Wait, why aren't they reaching out? Who are they giving that energy to now? Did I lose something valuable? That's the irony. You didn't become more valuable overnight. You became perceived as valuable the moment they couldn't feel you anymore. Your energy didn't change. It just became unavailable. And what's unavailable becomes magnetic. Scarcity makes the mind desperate. That's why people start stalking your stories, asking mutual friends about you, sending random, "Hey, how you been?" texts like they forgot how to spell your name last month. It's not coincidence. It's ego panic. It's the realization that the leash they thought they had on your soul is now snapped. But hear me loud and clear. This is not about playing games. This isn't manipulation. This is about energy awareness. It's about understanding that you are not meant to pour endlessly into people who only notice your worth when it's gone. When you feel unappreciated, unloved, unreciprocated, it is not noble to stay. It is wise to withdraw, because your peace is not negotiable, your energy is not disposable, and the moment you truly pull back, not for reaction, but for healing, that's the moment they realize they never had control in the first place. You were just generous. So now the game has changed. They feel the shift. The ground beneath their ego shakes. And you? You're rising, quietly, powerfully, no revenge, no loud exit, just a soft shutdown of your access. They wanted your energy. They should have respected it. They thought they had you. They didn't even know you. They dismissed you. They just awakened a version of you that no longer seeks validation. You became a ghost they can't forget, not because you died, but because you lived without them. So write this in the comments, my friends. They felt the pullback. Say it with confidence. Say it with clarity. Say it for the version of you that stayed too long, gave too much, and hurt in silence. Now, let the world feel your absence, and let your peace grow in the space where your energy used to leak. And stay with me, because next, we're going even deeper into what happens when you stop caring, and they start remembering. Number 3. They saw you stop caring, and it made them start thinking. The day you stop caring is the day they start noticing. It's strange, isn't it, folks? How you could pour so much emotion into someone, check in on them, support them, think about them day and night, and they barely blinked. They left you on read, gave you dry responses, maybe even acted like they were too busy for you. But the moment you let go, actually let go, not with words, but with your energy, your presence, your emotional availability, something shifted. You didn't even announce it. You just stopped caring. And that silence, that indifference, it echoed in their mind like a storm in an empty house. At first, they didn't flinch. People never do. They thought you'd come back. They thought it was just a mood swing. But as the days passed and you didn't check in, didn't chase, didn't care, they started thinking, wait, why aren't they trying anymore? That's when the gears started turning. Not because they suddenly loved you, not because they had a revelation, but because your withdrawal forced them into reflection. You see, my friends, caring is a form of power. And when you care too much for someone who doesn't reciprocate it, they don't feel blessed. They feel bored. Why? Because you've made them the center of your emotional world, and no one values what comes without cost. That's what you were, available, present, emotionally generous. And because you were always there, they never had to question it. But when you stopped, when that emotional faucet got turned off, the air got cold, and for the first time, they felt the absence. Imagine you're standing next to a heater. It's warm, Constant. So constant, in fact, you forget it's there. Then it shuts off. The silence is immediate. The cold creeps in, and suddenly the thing you didn't notice becomes all you can think about. That's how people feel when you stop caring. They don't realize how much your warmth meant until they're left in the cold. And you might be thinking, but I didn't want to be cold. I just didn't want to be ignored. Exactly. And that's why your shift wasn't out of anger. It was out of clarity. You finally saw the pattern. You finally accepted that no matter how much love you gave, it wouldn't make them choose you. So you stopped caring, not because you were bitter, but because you were done. And that is the moment everything changed. Let's talk about ego for a second. When someone senses that you care deeply, they feel secure. Their ego feels fed. But when that energy vanishes, when you no longer seem emotionally invested, their ego panics. It doesn't understand. It starts asking questions. Did they find someone else? Did I push them too far? Were they actually better than I thought? That's the beauty of detachment. It doesn't need to announce itself. It simply creates space. And in that space, curiosity is born, doubt is born, and sometimes even regret is born. But make no mistake, this isn't about punishing anyone. You're not trying to teach them a lesson. You're finally teaching yourself what your peace feels like. Because caring too much for people who don't see you is a form of self-betrayal, and you've done enough of that. You've stayed up at night wondering what went wrong. You've replayed messages, tried to figure out where the connection broke. But now you're free. Because now you don't care. And that doesn't mean you hate them. It means you reclaimed yourself. This is the turning point. This is when they start to feel what they never thought they would. The loss of your attention. They'll start remembering the things they ignored, the messages they left unanswered, the effort you gave without hesitation, and it will hit them like a delayed echo, a quiet thunder that rolls in after the lightning has already passed. They'll start noticing your silence, your presence online, but your absence in their world. They'll see you living, laughing, maybe even glowing without them, and that's when the reflection really begins, because nothing haunts the ego more than seeing someone they dismissed move on like they never existed. And you, my friend, are not doing it for show. You're doing it for you. You stopped caring not to make them chase, but to finally breathe. And that's what makes you powerful, when your care is no longer up for sale, when your time, your attention, your emotions become sacred again. People feel that shift. They feel the door closing, and some of them, they start knocking. Not because they suddenly became the person you needed, but because they can't stand the idea of not being chosen anymore. But by then, it's too late, because you're no longer that version of you. You're not hungry for validation. You're not waiting for the text. You're not glued to the last scene anymore. You've moved, you've risen, and now you see clearly anyone who makes you feel like caring is a burden doesn't deserve to be cared for by you at all. So, do me a favor, folks. Write it in the comments. I've stopped caring. Not in a spiteful way, not in anger, but in peace. Show them. Show yourself. Show the world around you that your energy is no longer free to those who treated it like a second option. Because when you stop caring, that's when they start thinking. And what's coming next? We're going to uncover exactly why your silence created chaos and how your peace became your loudest message. Stay with me. Number 4, you became the scarcity they didn't expect. People don't value what's always there. They value what they suddenly can't reach. At first, they didn't flinch. You were always around, always replying, always available. You were the constant they never had to earn, like a light switch they assumed would always turn on. But then, one day, it didn't. You stopped reaching out. You stopped waiting. You stopped giving them your access like it meant nothing. And that shift, that silence, was the moment you became rare. Not because you vanished, but because you stopped being predictable. And my friends, scarcity changes everything. You see, in a world where people are addicted to instant validation, your consistency becomes background noise. They get used to it. They assume you'll always care, that you'll always check in, that you'll always be there, even when they're cold, distant, and ungrateful. But when that emotional supply dries up, when you go quiet without explanation, it hits differently. That's when the illusion breaks. That's when they realize, I don't have access to them anymore. And that realization, that stings deeper than they ever expected. Think about it like water. When there's too much of it, people waste it. They leave the tap running, they spill it without thought. But the moment it runs dry, when they're thirsty, every drop becomes precious. You were that emotional water, flowing endlessly, loving without restraint, giving without being asked, and they wasted it until you stopped. Now you've become the drought in their desert, and suddenly they're desperate for a taste of what they once drowned in. Here's the part they never saw coming. They thought they had time. They thought you'd always circle back. They thought you'd always respond, always care, always chase. But when you didn't, when you walked away without a dramatic exit, without a final message, that's when their mind started spinning. Because people can ignore words, but silence screams. It forces them to feel what they refuse to face. You're not waiting anymore. You're gone in a way that feels permanent. And folks, that's the power of scarcity. Not in manipulation, not in playing hard to get, but in valuing yourself enough to withhold your energy from those who took it for granted. You didn't do it to make them chase. You did it because you finally realized you were giving gold to someone who treated it like gravel. Now they're left wondering, are they really done? Did I lose them for good? That uncertainty becomes a storm in their mind, a mental replay of everything they ignored, the texts they ghosted, the moments they downplayed, the attention they rolled their eyes at. It all comes back in a new light, because now it's gone. And the most dangerous regret is the kind that arrives after the door is already closed. But let's be honest, it wasn't easy for you. Pulling back takes strength. Staying quiet when you want to reach out takes discipline. And walking away from someone you deeply cared about simply because they didn't see your worth, that takes a level of emotional maturity most people never talk about. But you did it. You walked away, not because you stopped loving, but because you started respecting yourself more. And now they're facing the version of you they never believed existed. The version that doesn't need their attention. The version that's too busy becoming. The version that no longer explains, proves, or waits. You became unavailable, not out of bitterness, but out of growth. And that is what makes you scarce. That is what makes you powerful. Here's what happens next. They start to lurk, watch your stories, scroll through your photos, ask mutual friends about you. They don't come out and say it, not at first, but you'll feel the shift, the passive check-ins, the sudden just thought of you messages. They're testing the waters, not because they miss you deeply, but because they miss access to you. And now, that access costs something. It costs effort. It costs respect. It costs consistency. And most of them won't pay it because they got too used to the version of you that asked for nothing. But here's where the game changes. This time, you don't open the door just because they knock. This time, you don't reply just because they remembered. This time, your silence doesn't mean waiting. It means moving on. You are no longer a backup plan. You are no longer the easy choice. You are the man or woman who became rare, not by changing who you are, but by finally realizing how much you were giving to someone who never truly gave back. And that, my friends, is what turns the tables. Because when you become scarce, not out of spite but out of self-worth, you create a new reality, one where you no longer chase love. You attract it, one where you're no longer begging for attention, you command it. One where they no longer get to choose when you're worthy, because now you decide who gets access. So do something powerful today. Type this in the comments right now. I became the scarcity. Let it be a declaration. Let it be a shift in your mindset. Let the world see it. Let them see it. The ones who overlooked you. The ones who expected you to always care. The ones who never imagined a day would come where you'd stop showing up. Because now you don't need to be everywhere to be felt. You don't need to be loud to be powerful. You just need to be scarce. And what's coming next? We're going to dive deeper into how they started watching others want you, and how that made them see what they ignored. Stay with me. Number 5. They noticed other people. Noticing you. They didn't want you until they saw someone else smiling at what they took for granted. It's strange how quickly people change their tune when someone else starts clapping for what they used to ignore. They saw you every day, unbothered, consistent, kind. You gave them your energy, your best conversations, your time, and they shrugged. But now someone else laughs at your jokes, someone else compliments your vibe, someone else sees in you what they never did, and just like that, they feel it, a tightening in their chest, a sense of urgency that didn't exist before. They don't call it jealousy, but that's exactly what it is, silent, subtle, and soul deep. Let me break it down, folks. When you were only focused on them, they had no competition. They knew they had your attention locked in. They could ghost you, breadcrumb you, take you for granted, and you'd still show up. But the moment someone else entered the picture, even quietly, even in the background, everything changed. Now, they're not just dealing with your absence, they're dealing with replacement. And that thought alone is enough to flip their reality upside down. Picture a kid playing with a toy they've never cared about. It's dusty, it's forgotten. But the second another kid reaches for it, that old toy becomes their favorite again. Why? Not because they love it, but because someone else does. That's human nature. That's how fragile egos work. What wasn't valuable yesterday becomes priceless the moment someone else sees its worth. You didn't become more attractive. You became validated, publicly. And that, my friends, hits harder than any text you could have sent. Now they're watching. Maybe they saw a post. Maybe they heard someone mention your name. Maybe they saw a comment, a reaction, a tag that made them pause. And in that tiny pause, they questioned everything. Why are they smiling so much now? Who's that in the picture? Why do they seem different lately? It's not the love they're craving. It's the power they lost. Because when you were giving it all to them, they felt superior. But now that someone else is feeling your presence, they feel replaced. And that, folks, hurts their pride more than their heart. But here's the beauty in all of this. You didn't have to fake it. You didn't post thirst traps. You didn't try to make them jealous. You just started living. You shifted your energy. You redirected your glow. And naturally, others noticed, because people are drawn to someone who has nothing to prove. Your peace became attractive. Your detachment became magnetic. And others started giving you what you always deserved, recognition. And now the one who ignored you? They're confused. They're irritated. They might even try to act cool about it, liking a post here and there, sending you a random "hope you're well" message, pretending they're just checking in. But it's not casual, it's calculated. They're testing the waters, trying to see if they still have access, but they don't, not like before, because now they're not the only ones in the room. Let's be real. This hits their ego where it hurts, because nothing makes a person reflect harder than the idea that they might have let go of something others would have killed to keep. They didn't lose interest because you weren't enough. They lost interest because they didn't have to fight for you. But now they'd have to compete, and that competition exposes the truth. They were never prepared to earn you. And that's the shift, my friends. You're not chasing anymore. You're not waiting for validation. You're not sitting by the phone hoping they'll finally wake up. You are the wake-up. You are the lesson. And the other people noticing you, that's not your revenge. That's your reflection. A reflection of the inner work you've done, the peace you've built, the confidence you've grown. You didn't need to rub it in their face. You just became undeniable. So now the tables have turned. The one who once had your full focus is now watching from a distance, watching how others respond to you, watching the way you walk different, talk different, shine different. And maybe, just maybe, they're realizing you were the prize all along. They just had to see someone else treat you like it to believe it. Let that be a lesson. You never needed to force anyone to see your value. You just needed to stop hiding it in front of the wrong eyes. When you stopped chasing and started choosing yourself, your worth became obvious, not just to others, but to you. And now that you see it, now that you own it, don't you dare shrink again just because someone who overlooked you finally opened their eyes. So drop it in the comments right now. They noticed too late. Say it with clarity. Say it with peace. Say it because the version of you that was once ignored no longer exists. And as we keep going, stay with me, because what happens when you start growing without them? That's where the real transformation begins. Number 6. You evolved without their support. And it hit them. They thought you'd stay the same, but you became the version they never believed you'd become, without them. They thought you'd linger. They thought you'd stall in the same place they left you. They assumed you'd keep orbiting their world like a satellite chasing gravity that never pulls back. But you didn't. You did something most people never expect. You grew, without their love, without their encouragement, without their applause. And that hit them harder than your absence ever did. See, folks, people always believe they have time to circle back, time to hit you up when they're bored, time to get serious once they've played around. But what they never expect is that while they were indecisive, you were evolving, quietly, relentlessly, without drama, without announcements. You were becoming better in silence. And now the version of you they're seeing, it's unfamiliar, unreachable, and for the first time they're realizing they don't know you anymore. Let's get real. In the beginning, they saw you as the predictable one, always available, always showing love, always hoping they'd pick you. They looked at you like you were stuck, emotionally available on demand, like a vending machine of affection. But now they scroll past your updates, they glance at your stories, and something feels different. You look different. You move different. Your energy is untouchable. And the part that burns the most, they had front row seats to your potential and still chose to walk out of the theater early. You didn't evolve to get their attention. You evolved because you finally saw yourself. You stopped waiting for someone to call you enough. You stopped molding yourself into their preferences. You stopped letting their confusion be your ceiling. And when you did that, your world cracked wide open. Maybe you hit the gym and your body started transforming. Maybe you focused on your money, your mission, your mindset, and suddenly you had purpose in your voice and power in your step. Maybe you healed from old wounds, built boundaries they never thought you'd enforce, and now your peace can't be disrupted by breadcrumbs and half-effort apologies. That's what hits them the hardest. It's not that you became cold, it's that you became indifferent, emotionally grounded, unshakable. The version of you that used to overthink, overgive, and over-apologize is gone, and they didn't believe you could get there without them. Because deep down, my friends, some people want you to stay broken, not because they hate you, but because it makes them feel superior. If you stay stuck, they never have to reflect on what they did. But when you grow, when you rise, when you become undeniable, now they're forced to sit with the truth. They lost something they didn't even understand while they had it. That's when the regret kicks in. But it's not the kind they'll always show you. Most of the time, it comes in passive ways. A random reaction to your post, a proud of you message out of nowhere, a phone call just to catch up. But behind that calm exterior is panic, because you were supposed to need them, and now you're thriving without them. This is where you need to be strong, because the moment they notice your growth, some of them will try to re-enter, not because they've changed, but because you have. They'll want access to the upgraded you without having earned it. But you know better now. You've built yourself from silence. You've reconstructed your self-worth from pain. And now that you've evolved, the cost of your presence has gone up. Not out of revenge, but out of respect. They're not entitled to the new you, the one who wakes up with vision, the one who chooses peace over chaos, the one who doesn't chase because you know you are the catch. That version of you, that's earned. And if they couldn't see your value when you were standing still, they don't get to access you now that you're moving forward. And here's what you must understand. You owe no one your old self, the one who begged, the one who waited, the one who tried harder than they ever deserved. That version of you died the day you chose to rise. And what you've built since then, that's sacred. That's not for everyone. That's for the future you're walking into, not the past you survived. So right now, I want you to own that shift. Type it in the comments. I grew without them. Say it proudly. Say it for the version of you that stayed up questioning your worth. Say it for the nights you felt small. Say it for the day you finally realized you didn't need them to become who you were always meant to be. Let that be your declaration, not to them, but to yourself. Because the truth is, your growth was never about proving them wrong. It was about finally proving you were right about your own potential. And next, we're going to dig into the one thing they can't ignore, how you became emotionally unavailable, and how that made them want you more than ever. Stay with me. Number 7, you became emotionally unavailable, and that's when they wanted you most. When your emotions stop knocking on their door, they finally open it, only to find no one's there. You used to be emotionally available like clockwork. You cared, you showed up, you responded with depth. You made space for connection. You listened to the things they didn't even say out loud. And how did they treat it? Like it was nothing, like your heart had no weight, like your feelings were something they could pause, ignore, or walk away from, and just return to whenever they felt like it. But one day, that version of you expired. One day, you stopped giving access to the softest parts of you, and that was the day they finally noticed. You didn't become cold, you became selective. Your heart wasn't closed, it was guarded, not out of revenge, but out of wisdom. And they felt the shift, even if they couldn't explain it. They couldn't feel your emotional openness anymore. The version of you that used to overextend yourself to understand them, gone. The part of you that would explain your every thought so they didn't misunderstand you. Silent, the emotional hand you once kept stretched out in case they came around. Pulled back. That, folks, that absence of emotional access is what shook them. You see, when someone gets used to the warmth of your emotional presence, they assume it'll always be there. But when that warmth fades, not because you got bitter, but because you got smart, it messes with their equilibrium. Suddenly, they're reaching for something that no longer exists in the same way. They try the same old tricks. They say familiar things. They test the waters with nostalgia, flirtation, fake concern. But it doesn't land the way it used to. Why? Because you're not reacting anymore. You're not revealing anymore. You've stopped opening the door when they knock. Now they're met with the one thing they never thought they'd experience from you: detachment. You're present, maybe. You might even respond, but there's a difference now. Your energy is cool, controlled, focused elsewhere. And that's what drives them crazy, because what they used to take for granted is now out of reach, and no amount of charming words, sudden memories, or subtle flirting can bring it back. This is what most people don't understand. Emotional unavailability isn't a game. It's a result. It's what happens when someone has given their emotions to the wrong hands too many times. It's what happens when you finally get tired of trying to prove that your love is worth something. It's not bitterness, it's emotional sobriety. You're no longer intoxicated by the idea of being chosen. You've chosen yourself instead. And now they want access to something they once ignored. Not because they suddenly respect you, but because they can't feel you anymore. That void triggers their ego. That distance awakens their curiosity. That silence haunts them, because emotional presence is addictive, and now they're in withdrawal. But here's the best part, my friends. You don't need to return. You don't need to open back up just because they finally noticed. You don't owe them the emotionally generous version of you that they dismissed. Because the truth is, they weren't ready for it. They weren't ready for real intimacy, for real depth, for real connection. They wanted comfort without commitment, attention without effort, your heart without responsibility. And now that they've lost it, now that it's locked behind emotional boundaries, now they want to feel it again. Too late. Because now you give your emotional energy to yourself, to your growth, to people who respect it, protect it, and pour into you with the same intention. You no longer feel guilty for protecting your heart. You no longer stretch yourself thin trying to make someone feel what they were numb to all along. You don't play therapist to someone who only wants to vent but never wants to evolve. You've upgraded. And that version of you? That's priceless. And maybe they'll try to re-enter. Maybe they'll come back with apologies, explanations, stories about how they've changed. Maybe they'll even mean it. But you'll know better, because the healed version of you doesn't crave what the broken version of you begged for. The new you doesn't fall for breadcrumbs. The new you isn't impressed by late recognition. The new you doesn't open the door just because they finally decided to knock. Let that be your power. Let your emotional unavailability be your armor, not to keep love out, but to keep chaos away, not to avoid intimacy, but to protect your peace. You didn't stop feeling. You just stopped bleeding for people who never tried to stop the cut. And that's what they feel now, not just the distance, but the consequence of overlooking someone who was always willing to feel deeply for them. So drop it in the comments right now. My emotions are earned. Let that be your line in the sand. Let it echo for the people who thought you'd always be there. Let it serve as a reminder to yourself that you're no longer emotionally available to people who are inconsistent with you. You are not a revolving door. You are not a backup plan. You are not a place people return to once they've burned everything else down. You are whole, you are grounded, you are emotionally sovereign, and that, my friends, is what makes you magnetic. That is what makes you unforgettable, and that is what makes the ones who overlooked you finally feel the loss they never thought would come. If you felt this shift, if you know this message was speaking directly to your soul, press that like button, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment below. Say it loud. My emotions are earned. Show them. Show yourself. Show the world around you that your heart is no longer on clearance. It's priceless. And the next person who wants it, they better come correct.